Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and I trust you had a great weekend. We certainly had a enjoyable one. It's very cool here in Nairobi, and the seasons are all awry, and it's really quite disconcerting to have periods of cold when you expect it to be warm. But I suppose that's the consequence of global warming. It was a pleasure speaking with Fiona Woolf, the Lord Mayor of the City of London, on CNBC today, and I look forward to saying hello to her when she comes here in the not too distant future. The next Mind Speak is actually this Saturday, and the guest is Manoj Changarampat, who is the East Africa Internet and Mobile Director for Samsung. A very interesting career that spanned mobile handsets from Nokia through Samsung and others. Extremely knowledgeable about this business, and Samsung have been extremely aggressive in building out a sub-Saharan African business, and I'll put up a photograph of him I took when I was at one of their presentations, and he was taming Ryan, who was making the presentation. And if you haven't seen Dennis McCory's Mind Speak, then do have a look at it. It's very spare, lean, minimalist, yet maximalist. My home thoughts go to Rumi, and the reason why I hadn't seen the moon for a very long time, and suddenly over the weekend I saw it, and Rumi says, "Moonlight floods the whole sky from horizon to horizon. How can it fill your room? How much it can fill your room depends on its windows." I'll put up that photograph of the moon last night in the early evening, and go back to Salman Rushdie, who said, "Ours is the most cryptic of centuries, its true nature a dark secret." And I think, given the new normal being such an arrhythmic world, I think Salman's spot on. And then I felt a little hungry, so I found a photograph of a starter from Nobu in London, which is one of my favourites. Political reflections. NATO leaders are trying to avoid provoking Russia whilst bolstering deterrence in a way that is unambiguous, says Ian Lesser. And indeed, it remains a shadow zone, at times difficult to read. The ceasefire, was it broken or was it not? Was it just, extraordinary situation there? And I spoke about this before, and I said NATO has thrown out a whole new characterization of warfare called ambiguous warfare, and that eastern Ukraine has become a shadow zone. There is a widespread expectation of a ratcheting higher of sanctions, but falling short of cutting Russia off from SWIFT. And interestingly, the counter-reaction from Putin was to stop food imports. And apparently milk prices in some parts of Europe are down by as much as 30%. Some fruit, such as apples and pears, now so cheap that farmers are thinking of not harvesting. So you can see that there's a lot of complexity and moving parts to the scenario. ISIS's treatment of Foley was macabre, and included mock executions and forcing Foley to stand against a wall to pose as if he had been crucified. And I could not avoid the symmetry with Abu Ghraib, and then I just typed in Abu Ghraib and picked the first image, and you can see what I mean. And then I was reading an article on global research, and this is a sentence for deep down in the article. One of the first large-scale deployments of cult technology was the creation of the jihad movement by the CIA, which I thought was interesting. New York Times is carrying a story about Qatar, and Paul Salem, a scholar at the Middle East Institute, says the big falling out is over Egypt, not Syria. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and other Gulf states are putting the squeeze on Qatar. I'll put up a photograph of the skyline of Doha. And basically, several people identified by the United States as private fundraisers for Al-Qaeda's Syrian affiliate operate freely in the city. And then I went back to the Ebola scenario and Joshua Lederberg, the Nobel Prize-winning biologist's famous statement that the single biggest threat to man's continued dominance on this planet is the virus. Narendra Modi wrote to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif to offer help for relief efforts in areas of the disputed region of Kashmir controlled by Pakistan. Modi, in his letter, offered any assistance that you may need in the relief efforts that will be undertaken by the government of Pakistan, adding, our resources are at your disposal wherever you need them. And I was thinking to myself, he's really been a lot more statesmanlike than many people would have expected, because he was very hard right as he sought to win the election. But in many respects, you have to tack right to get the numbers in many countries. Reagan did it, and you can see Modi did it to win the election. But subsequently, I think he's outperformed those expectations. Euro 129.37. Dollar index 83.90, Japanese yen 105.08. It depreciated to 105.71 on September 5th. That was the weakest level since October 2008. Japan's economy contracted by 7.1% in the 3 months to June, more than initial estimates. Swissy 0.9326, pound 162.11. It fell as low as 161.65. Reaching levels not seen since November the 26th, and that's all about Scotland. Aussie 0.9373, backed off Friday's highs above 94 at 94.03. India rupee 60.21, South Korean won 10.2580, Rial 224.10, Egyptian pound 7.1582, South African rand 10.70.59. The yen has declined 1.4% in the past month, according to Bloomberg correlation indices. The euro has dropped 2%, and the dollar has strengthened 1.9%. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index, but I expect some congestion at this 84 to 84.50 area. We've been in a very strong and strengthening trend, but I think we might have a pause for breath. But I still agree with the comment I wrote at the end of August, that in the old days these conditions would have created a flight into the dollar, and I think things are tipping, and if they tip really big, the dollar will really soar. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 3-month chart, 129.41. Sterling 162.11, fell nearly 1% to 161.65 earlier this morning, lowest level in 10 months, and this is all about Scotland, where the latest opinion polls showed that the Scots might well vote to leave. With less than 2 weeks to go before the vote, a UCUP survey for the Sunday Times put the Yes to Independence campaign at 51% against the No camp at 49%. Sterling fell nearly 1% on that news. And just Jesper Bergman says, I think the message here is that the market really hadn't priced in the possibility of a yes vote, so therefore we will probably see some uncertainty, maybe some volatility. George Osborne said, no ifs, no buts, we will not share the pound if Scotland separates from the United Kingdom. Gold, I'm going to put up a 1-year chart, we're at 1270.85, I still think we're going to 1240. Crude oil, we're at lows here at 93.30, and prices were down 2.8% last week, but I think this is the level that we might try and bounce from. Afonso Dhlakama came out of hiding on September the 4th and returned to Maputo for the signing of a peace accord. The two men apparently warmly embraced each other after signing the peace deal, and I think that makes what I wrote on the 2nd of June 2014, that Mozambique could be the next Qatar, much more likely, because this was the key political risk sort of lurking in the background. Grace Mugabe, poised for political power in Zimbabwe, 49-year-old, was recently nominated as leader of the ruling ZANU-PF's Women's League, as well as having a place on its central committee. She insists she is ready. The time has come to show people what I am made of, she told a crowd in Mazoe. People should learn to wait for their time. I had never dreamed of entering politics, but you have approached me, and I am ready to go. With her election virtually assured, at a party congress in December, she will take a seat on ZANU-PF's Politburo, and as Mugabe's wife, be untouchable. Tendai Biti, the former finance minister, thinks she will go on to lead ZANU-PF. After years of speculation of who will succeed Mugabe, some believe the next leader has been hiding in plain sight. Then, in response to an accusation that she goes on shopping trips, and particularly at Harrods, she says, the only thing I've bought in Harrods, almond nuts, because I eat lots of almond nuts. I want to eat healthily, she said. Political opponents are skeptical of the notion of a President Mugabe Mark II. Nelson Chamisa, organizing secretary of the MDC, said, if I look at the chances of her becoming president, I would find it easier to impregnate a man or change Europe to Africa or Africa to Europe. Interesting time, interesting moment, and I think I agree with the Chamisa. I can't see her being able to hold on to that position in his absence. Bharti Airtel gained after the unit divested African telecoms tower assets through its subsidiary Bharti Airtel International, and Eaton Towers announced an agreement for the divestment of over 3,500 telecoms towers from Airtel to Eaton Towers. Airtel will sell and lease back over 3,500 towers to Eaton in 6 countries across its African operations under a 10-year contract. The South African oil share eased 0.56% on Friday. It's up 11.961% this year. Dollar Rand, we're back on a softening trend around the 10.70.47 level. We're still in this 10.90, 10.30 range, which we've been in for a while. I'll put up a 6-month chart, you can see. Egyptian pound, 715.88. The Egyptian stock market firmed another 0.76%. It's now up 43.364% this year at fresh 2014 and multi-year highs. Nigerian oil shares at June 20th, 2014 lows. It's down 0.4089% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange ticked higher, 0.7%. Talk of going to the IMF finally. It's up 3.35% in 2014, but at January 24th lows. And bear in mind, the SEDI has slumped 37% this year. If you haven't seen that inside story about Ebola, the link is on the Rich Wrap-Ups. And as I said on the 18th of August, viruses exhibit non-linear and exponential characteristics. And I'm not sure we've hit that piece on the graph yet. And on the 25th of August, I said it continues to gain velocity. I'll put up an image of the Ebola virus disease. Apparently a vaccine given to monkeys. Vaccinated monkeys have developed long-term immunity to the Ebola virus, raising a prospect of successful human trials, say scientists. The experiments by the UN National Institutes of Health showed immunity could last at least 10 months. So we're still in a very fluid moment when it comes to Ebola, and it represents a clear and present danger to the entire Africa Rising narrative. Sudan's annual inflation rate fell slightly to 46.4% in August, reflecting a 0.9% decrease in prices of consumer goods. That's really extraordinary, isn't it? It's been up there for quite a while. The soaring cost of living is a major issue in the run-up to elections next year. Baby formula is among the most shoplifted items in Africa. And this is an article in G Africa. This list is the real measure of middle-class demand. The retail industry euphemistically calls shoplifting shrinkage, and this study by the University of South Africa reveals that, contrary to popular belief, most shoplifters do not steal items because they are needy, hungry, or desperate. A good 90% of shoplifters are amateur, opportunistic pilferers who nick small items that they may not even need, only when the chance presents itself. but 1 in 10 is a professional shoplifter who targets high-value items intended for resale on the black market. Shoplifting is estimated to cost African retailers anything between 1.5% and 1.7% of turnover. Atul Shah reckoned that the country's $2.3 billion retail industry was losing up to $35 million every year to shoplifters. Most people think it's considerably higher, much higher, on a percentage term in NACMAT. That's the anecdotal checker. What kind of goods are stolen through shoplifting? Criminologists have come up with a nifty acronym to describe the type of items that heavy-duty shoplifters target: craved items, concealable, removable, available, valuable, enjoyable, and disposable. Globally, the most shoplifted items are cheese, choice cuts of fresh meat, and confectionery, chocolates, along with cigarettes and high-end liquor. In Africa, the craved goods seems to be slightly different, and anecdotal evidence suggests that infant formula is among the most targeted goods. Most major supermarkets in Kenya, for instance, now either place infant formula behind a counter or secure it with a tamper-proof seal. High-end beauty products such as anti-stretch mark and anti-wrinkle cream are also popular with the thieves, along with small, valuable electronics like digital cameras and smartphones. Coming to Kenya, the Hague prosecution has asked to halt the trial of the Kenyan president. The accused person in this case is the head of a government that has so far failed fully to comply with its obligations to the court, ICC prosecutor Fatu Bensouda said in a filing, asking judges to adjourn the case indefinitely. And as long ago as 19th of July 2013, I wrote, then the case against the president is crumbling like a stale biscuit. My weekly piece was about the decapitation of Godane, Africa's insurgencies, and US Africa Command. On Friday, the Pentagon's press secretary, Rear Admiral John Kirby, issued the following immediate release number NR465-14, September 05, 2014, on Ahmed Godane. We have confirmed that Ahmed Godane, the co-founder of Al-shebab, has been killed. The US military undertook operations against Godane on September the 1st, which led to his death. Removing Godane from the battlefield is a major symbolic and operational loss to Al-shebab. The United States works in coordination with its friends, allies, and partners to counter the regional and global threats posed by violent extremist organizations. This is not one of those cases where a permission slip is needed, a senior administration official told the New York Times on Tuesday. The timing of the assassination by Hellfire missiles and US Africa Command on the very same day that African heads of state were meeting in Nairobi to discuss ways of boosting efforts and international support to combat insurgencies was an important signal in the noise. The timing was everything. The meeting was expected to see leaders agree on concrete steps to enhance existing measures to effectively address the threat of terrorism. That's the African Union in a statement. Ahmed Godane was well known to Kenyans, and in an audio message released days after the Nairobi attack, Godane praised the Westgate terrorists who killed at least 67 people. I have sent ahead of the hour with the sword so that Allah will be worshipped alone, without partners, he said in an audio message posted on a website linked to Al-shebab. You cannot withstand a war of attrition inside your own country, so withdraw all your forces or be prepared for an abundance of blood that will be spilt in your country, he said. I think there are few people in Kenya who would not have commended US Africa Command on removing Godane from the battlefield. What is clear is that the Boko Haram insurgency in the west, the Al-shebab and its franchises insurgency here in the east, have both intensified and ratcheted higher. Boko Haram militants in Nigeria have killed more than 2,000 people so far this year in their campaign to impose Islamic rule, according to Human Rights Watch. HRW calculates that 179 people have died in terrorist incidents in Kenya over the same period. These statistics inform us of a disjunctive move in 2014 on both sides of the continent and many points in between. The markets have exhibited a noteworthy and outstanding resilience, with the Nairobi All-Share rallying close to 30% since Westgate. The Nigerian All-Share, whilst trading near 10-week lows, has been similarly resilient. However, the spillover effects into the real economy have been clear for all of us to see. Foreign Policy wrote last week, the tourism industry along the coast is on its deathbed. If you wander around our malls, you will note foot traffic and time spent in the mall are both down big, and indigenous confidence levels, which in my view has been consistently sky high and a key ingredient of the bull's narrative, has also taken a buffeting. As we look forward, investors need to ask themselves the following questions. Are we ahead of the curve or behind the curve in matters of insurgency? Are we headed into a new Waziristan normal? Last year, Ben Bernanke was asked why people hold gold, and he said, as protection against what we call tail risks, really, really bad outcomes. The insurgency tail risk remains, and how it plays out will have important consequence for ourselves and the entire Africa Rising narrative, I said. Now, Bloomberg is saying for a second time in 6 years there's a vacancy at the top of the radical Islamist Al-shebab group in Somalia. US Tomahawk cruise missiles killed his predecessor, Aden Hashi Aero, in May 2008. Godane, of course, took responsibility for the attack last year on the Westgate shopping mall. Obama said we're going to degrade and ultimately defeat ISIL the same way that we have gone after Al-Qaeda, the same way we have gone after the Al-Qaeda affiliate in Somalia, where we released today the fact that we have killed the leader of the Al-shebab in Somalia, he said. Al-shebab warned avenging the death of our scholars and leaders is a binding obligation on our shoulders that we will never relinquish nor forget, no matter how long it takes. This is over the weekend. By the permission of Allah, you will surely taste the bitter consequences of your actions. I'll put up a photograph taken on Christmas Day with the Christmas lights on Westgate. Christmas, it was in the evening, 1,729 days ago. Another one of Westgate taken when it was on fire. Katrina has written an interesting piece in the FT, and I like this quote. It's unclear whether picking off the head of the snake of the organization is a good thing or will unleash a hydra and 2 heads will grow back in his place. Uchumi reported full-year profit after tax increased 7.64%. Full-year net total sales up 6.197%. Other income was up 45.13%. Operating expenses up 13.88%. Finance costs, but still a marginal amount, $750,000 only, but up 302%. Full-year profit before tax was down 6.822%. Full-year profit after tax was up 7.64%. Reason being, full-year tax was down sharply, 46.88%. Full-year earnings per share up 7.4%. Dividend unchanged at 30 cents. In their commentary, saying that they've got a total branch network of 37, 27 in Kenya, 4 in Tanzania, 6 in Uganda, saying the results were impacted by a weak Uganda, where the Uganda subsidiary saw a 12% drop. Kenya was up 2%, Tanzania was strongest, plus 10. Annual customers increased by 13%. The government of Kenya alone has been fully settled as of June 30th. I think it's a cheap share, but it needs to accelerate more. It needs to accelerate its rollout strategy on a much steeper and more aggressive trajectory. And I remain baffled why no one has stepped in with a takeover offer. The Kenya shillings was 88.691, behaving very well in the context of a much stronger dollar, and I remain prepared to stand by my comment of the 1st of September that I think it's not going to get to 90 or even 95. Nairobi all shares up 16.677% this year and 0.4992% below record high set last week. NSE 20 is up 4.75% this year and is at more than 6-year highs. And Centum closed at a record on Friday, up 68.18%. The market is in a pullback, but it's expected to be shallow before we resume our upwards march. Once again, thank you for stopping by.